Hello everybody, this is Snarist, and I'm back for the last time with my RWBY Grimm Eclipse, Eclipse difficulty, solo walkthrough, and this is chapter 10, final exam. And my opinion, overall the hardest chapter in the game. It also took me the longest. Overall footage ended up being just a little over 1 hour, despite the 20-minute time limit here. Now this is going to be a little bit tough, this sequence here. You want to get into the far corner, against the door you're supposed to exit through. And all you have to do is just keep using your ultimate to stun them and stagger them, and use the chance to build up your stun blade to catch them all in one big wave. Keep building up your ultimate, get right up on their faces and drop a load in it. You just keep repeating the same thing until the door opens up. And I suppose from what I ended the last video off of, from the topics I was talking about, games I'm going to play, what I'm going to do commentary for, I think all in all I probably should have saved it for this video in some of these earlier sequences before getting to the boss. But it's all done and done now. And, you know, going back and revisiting this footage and seeing how I did and talking about RWBY a little bit more, it's kind of gotten me in that mood. So if you remember in the last chapter when we destroyed those tanks, you had to do the same thing here. The more of these tanks that you destroy, more of these nodes, the more enemies are going to show up. Now, only Grimm is showing up right now. I'm pretty sure I did die on this sequence, but I had to fight a bunch of the robot guys instead, the red robots. So if you're only fighting Grimm here, good for you. Oh wait, never mind. Don't get your hopes up too much. Try to catch these guys as they come out of their animation of spawning in. Because I was lucky enough to get them in a conga line. And if you want to, you can just kind of keep this up. Now unfortunately Blake is still moving around heaps, so the stun blade is getting thrown off. It's no longer a straight arc, and I'm going to have to be prepared to fight some of them. Yep, drop an ultimate in the middle of them. I should have really have gotten out of there at that point, but I didn't. Not that I need to, because there's only a few of them left. And then once you're done with them, you're free to go ahead and take out the other nodes at your own leisure. And what I was saying before is, I've kind of gotten back in a RWBY mood, and while it may be a while before, you know, of all the series I'm doing, trying to get all of these videos out, and all the ones I've done before this, with Ninja Gaiden 4, but if anyone's keen to see me do a walkthrough of RWBY Arafel, which is the Metroidvania that they made, based around Season 7 or so, and while the game itself, even when you don't know what you're doing, is maybe only like maybe 3 to 5 hours, and I still think it's a better game than this, even though I don't like it as much as I do with this one. What I will say is that, you know, I'd be keen to give a try for a no upgrade run. I think it'd be pretty fun to do. But if not, then I'd have to play the game a couple times just so I know where I'm going. I can make notes, and then I can go back through a second time and know exactly where I'm going. Because I do remember the first time I played, a big problem I had was finding out where to go sometimes. It's not nearly as complicated as some other Metroidvanias can be, and I know that there are some collectibles you can find that are part of a trophy, but I think I got all but one of them. I had no idea where to find it, and I couldn't find any answers online about where it was. There was just no straight answer. And plus the fact that RWBY games aren't super popular, so you don't get a lot of people talking about them, like at all. So what I'm doing here is I'm just doing super heavy attacks on the tanks there, and you'll get all these dudes spawning in. I did die on the sequence the first time, because not only are you dealing with the red robots, you're also dealing with the white robots. And put together in an environment like this, and being pushed up against the wall with your heavy attacks, well, it just takes a few of those grenades to catch you off guard. I've never had a problem with these spikes in the ground. They don't damage the enemy, but they can damage you. I've never had a problem with them myself, but if you can line up these enemies with the way you move to get caught on this glass tank, you can take out so many of them, and you can stop a lot of them from firing off those grenades. But be careful, because some of them do launch those grenades off, and they are fast, and they will come towards you, and they can shoot them from a far distance, and once they let them off, unless you've got a keen eye to spot them, you won't notice that they come in and hit you. I don't know if you noticed it before when I got hit by the first one and had to get out of here, but it definitely happens. So this is more of an endurance and patience thing than anything else. The next fights coming up will definitely be the hardest parts of it. But yeah, if anyone at all, even just one person, wants to let me know, like, hey, I'd be keen on seeing a walkthrough on RWBY Arafel, just a regular one, or a walkthrough on RWBY Arafel with no upgrades, If you really are truly keen on spending your time watching that and watching me do a sort of semi-professional, somewhat professional guide, sort of like this sort of thing on RWBY RFL, even just a regular walkthrough, I'd be more than keen to give that a shot. I just need to have an incentive to do it, and all it would take is your guys' word. And so, technically, I think this gauntlet fight here that you do is harder than the final boss, but for a different reason. Because you'll be fighting a lot of these guys that explode. They're pretty easy to get rid of, but of course you need to find the time to use the stun blade to take them all out at once, and you have to deal with all these white robots. Now, pretty much every enemy in the game is no problem because of this elevated surface on the side here, and depending on your angle, when they go to use their grenades, it can sometimes bounce off of the bank and away from you. I do like the physics in that. Otherwise, these things are very dangerous and you should stay away from them. Now that I think about it from what I just saw, a neat little technique you could employ is standing on a diagonal angle from them, so that when they fire their grenades, as you're shooting your gun, you're pushing yourself backwards, so that way you're pushing yourself out of their harm's way, if that makes any sense. So you're on an angle to them, and they're firing a grenade straight at you, but when you're shooting a gun, your body turns and you're backing up as you shoot. It might work for some of them, but it doesn't really work for all of them. And this fight here isn't so bad, and even the final boss is a mutated Deathstalker. So you'll be fighting basically a giant Grimm Scorpion, but it's mutated and it's got a couple of extra moves. A couple of them have weird hitboxes, but the Scorpion itself is not the reason why the boss is hard, because it is a hard boss. It's more lengthy than anything else. It doesn't take that much to kill. It's not even really all that dangerous. It's everything else you have to deal with alongside it. Because sometimes, if you take too long to damage it, or if you get to a new phase, it'll spawn in a bunch of Grimm that come after you, along with a couple of these red robots. But then, as you get towards the final stages of the fight, when it's barely got any health, it'll spawn at least one of these red robots and a white robot at the same time. So you have a red robot constantly hounding and chasing you down, and one of these white robots that are standing at a distance, peppering you with shots from its minigun, and if you get close enough, firing a grenade at you while you're trying to wait for an opening from the Deathstalker to get at its tail. But because it's in the later stages of the game, it takes forever and gets real passive when opening its tail up for attacks, and when it opens itself up for attack, it's never really that long, and it takes ages for it to be vulnerable again. And if you miss your chance because the red robot keeps hounding you and keeps threatening to kill you, because it will, well, you know, this is a long fight, obviously. But I think probably the most sinful thing about that is that even if you were to kill the red robot or the white robot that's peppering you from a distance when you're fighting the mutated Deathstalker, as soon as you kill one of them, an exact duplicate and clone of their enemy spawns in. Like, just like that, just instantly. You kill it, bang, 1 second later, there's another one jumping down, spawning in, and it just runs after you. So you have to deal with it. And that's why Blake is so useful in this fight in particular, because that way, you know, with stun blaze, you can keep them stunned for a couple seconds, buying you some time to get some hits on the Deathstalker. That's what you have to go for, and the Deathstalker can only be hit in its tail, in the weak point there. And charging up a heavy attack is the way to go, otherwise every other attack you do is going to do almost no damage. And so I say that's why I think overall, because Yang's got the most damage on her heavy attack, I think Yang is probably the best in terms of raw damage against the boss. She kills it so quickly. Because I have beaten this with Yang before, but not on a higher difficulty, like on normal. And so Yang's great against the Deathstalker. RWBY can be okay, but not super great. I just picked Blake, obviously, because, well, you know, the stun blades. And as I've said before, this encounter here, this really long wave-based encounter you've got to deal with before the Deathstalker, is probably harder than the fight itself. It doesn't go on for as long, but it is very dangerous. And like I said before, it took me an hour to get all the recorded footage for the entire thing, fails and everything. So the fact that I only get to keep a third of the footage, maybe even a quarter of it, it really just goes to show, doesn't it? And something I just noticed then is that even though I was standing up on an elevated surface, I was pointed in the right direction of these white robots here, and I used the stun blades and it completely went over their head and missed them, but it still hit and staggered them, because technically I am aiming towards them. So yeah, this game isn't really accounting for certain directions. But see, look at that, I'm just getting peppered by all these shots, and it sucks too, because they will throw these bombs if you get far enough away from them. But if you get close enough to them, they pepper you with, you know, minigun shots, and you can't do any combos on them. And if you get too close to attack them with your melee, they'll hit the ground simultaneously with their guns and jump away and get away from you. So they always have an answer for something that you do. And the way to do it is just to look for that one gap, that one opportunity for you to sneak in and do a heavy attack to an enemy. If you've got two of them, go for the one that isn't vulnerable, because the other one's stunned, you've got more of a chance to hit the other one. See, look at that, I'm just trying to finish him off, but fuck it, I'll shoot him. And this is the Mutated Deathstalker. And I died a bunch of times on this, like a few times, but it's more so the problem is how long it takes. So the Mutated Deathstalker will do a circular attack like that, which sends out these arrows, these stingers. You can only get 2 charged heavy attacks on the tail at once. It doesn't look like it did that much damage, but trust me, you do a fair bit of damage to it. And in the earliest phases, you get a lot of chances to kill it and to attack it, but yeah, just keep away from it, let it do its thing. Stay out of the front of the Scorpion when it does that and sends a wave down your way, like a carpet bomb of stingers. But they have weird hitboxes, so just keep very clear of it. Like that, yeah. If you'd looked very closely, it almost looks like none of it would have hit me, it would just miss me, but they have a little bit of a radius to them when they attack you. So just keep keeping away from them. Don't do that. Don't stand too close, but don't stand too far away either. Get a couple of cheeky hits in. And there he spawns in the Grimm, he charges towards you. The charge move he does under the ground isn't really all that dangerous. And it rarely ever hits you, especially if you're competent and careful. And so I'm just waiting for him to make a move, because I know these things spawn, but the Grimm themselves can get killed by the stingers luckily, but they don't spawn back. They only spawn if you take forever to kill them, or to get through the phase, or if you do get through the phase and he'll spawn another wave of Grimm. And now we've got one of these white robots to deal with. And of course he's going to be a nuisance, and I know he's going to spawn another one in, so I don't get too carried away with them, because the white robots on their own aren't so bad, but when you've got a red robot in the mix, that's when it becomes a problem, because you've got something that's hounding you constantly. And so you have to keep using your stun blades to keep both of them stunned, and it makes the white robot more vulnerable. So luckily, even though the targeting messed up a little bit there, I was trying to go for the stinger, but I ended up going and doing a heavy attack on one of those Grimm that burrow on the ground, but I still managed to nip it. So I get a little bit fed up with this guy and just wanted to get him weakened, you know, get a cheeky hit in there. But now he's just kind of standing around camped up next to it. I do know that for the red robots and even these white robots, when they spawn in after you kill them, something I noticed is that if you're on the exact opposite side of where they spawn in, they become pacified. But because you're chasing around the Deathstalker trying to get some hits in and trying to weaken it, you'll inevitably come across its path close enough to where it becomes aggressive, or it becomes more active, and then it chases after you. And I just think it's so terrible. It makes sense, you know, survival, preservation, but the idea that the Mutated Deathstalker will become a lot more passive and won't show its stinger like this as often in the later phases, because it's trying to keep itself alive, and so it takes ages for the next time the stinger pops up to be used. But now instead of the regular burrowing Grimm, you've got the exploding ones. Take them out immediately. Luckily they're a lot weaker than the other ones. And now we've got the red robot spawning in, and this is where things drastically slow down. Because if you've been paying attention to the time, we've been fighting the Deathstalker right now for about, I'd say, maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And the Deathstalker only has a third of its health left, roughly. And now that we've got the red robot coming in, we've still got another 6 minutes on this video. Just a little bit over 6 minutes. Just goes to show, doesn't it? That this fight would be a lot faster if there was a delay on the spawns for these enemies. Like, I don't even care if it was 10 or 15 seconds. I didn't want the Deathstalker to be as evasive as it was, to not show the stinger as often as it does. And I didn't want these enemies to constantly spawn in, so it's staggered now, so I go in for a couple of hits. But look at that, he's already on my ass. These things do not slow down, they don't hold back, they just keep on going. But then again, as I've said, this is built for co-op, and it's not balanced for single player at all. You can do it, and there are achievements for beating it solo, but yeah. And now that I'm reviewing this footage, I realise it's only the red robot to deal with, and if you kill it, another one will take its place, of course. But I'm guessing it'll be the final phase of the Mutant Deathstalker after we do a little bit more damage to it, that we'll have to fight a few more of those burrowing Grimm, probably the ones that explode, and then we not only get a red robot to deal with, but we'll have to deal with a white one as well. So if anything, that final phase there, that last fifth of its life, is the real tricky part. See, like, it's dead. Yeah, it's already up there, but it hasn't come down because it got hit by my stun blade. Yeah, just already there, fresh one ready to go. It's like, if you really want to, why not just send a whole lot of them down, eh? And I get that the weak point is where you're supposed to damage the Mutant Deathstalker, but given how powerful the RWBY girls actually are, and I just think it's bizarre that we're not allowed to just fight it normally. Like, I'd be okay with fighting the Mutant Deathstalker and doing very little damage to it, just as long as we could always do damage to it. Like, of course, hitting the stinger does the most damage, but why not allow us to do damage no matter what, even if we're not hitting its weak part? Because that's the whole point of a weak part. It's the weak point, the thing you should be aiming for, but if you don't, you can still do damage and you can still wear it down. And luckily these are not the exploding, burrowing Grimm, but there's still a shit ton of them, and they take a little bit of punishment, which is not great, so I'm just using my ultimate on them and getting rid of them, clearing the field. But of course we still need to deal with the red robot and the white robot, while also finishing off the Mutant Deathstalker in the last part of it. And we've still got a few more minutes to go before we do that. I mean, imagine that, just a few minutes and we take down 2/3 of the Scorpion's health, but now we need to spend the same amount of time taking off 1/5 of it. Just because there's so many enemies, and then when you do get these other enemies here, they respawn instantly. So here I am going back in for a heavy attack, and I completely miss. It locks onto the Deathstalker, even though the game knows that you can't wound it unless you hit the weak point. It locked onto the Deathstalker for some reason, and it made me so mad. Because given how infrequent it pops up to stab the ground with its stinger, you know, like every 45 seconds or a minute, that could have been a good amount of time saved. And honestly, given how much I've been talking right now, I'm rather surprised that the time hasn't run out yet. It's like trying to find the filler words needed to fill an exam, like word count. And I get that even in schools, I understood the need for exams to have a set amount of criteria or word count, but a set amount of criteria, it doesn't make sense. A certain criteria and a set amount of words, I understand that, but sometimes you just don't need to elongate things. Sometimes getting to the point just makes more sense, because the way they want you to write these essays, the words they want you to use to help fill in the gaps, it's like teaching you English. And it's just, and having an essay where you're talking about a serious topic and using words to fill in the time needed, and using eloquent words and like amazing grammar and punctuation and sounding, you know, like a poet. That's the sort of thing you do that when you're in your late teens or in your young adult years, and they want children to do this. It's like sometimes things are best with the children where they just sort of say it how it is. And look at that, I killed the white robot, there's already another one off to the left where they spawn in, and he's already throwing a grenade and being an asshole, while I'm getting a spear shoved up my ass by the red robots. But yeah, they expect school children to be writing essays to the level that a young adult or a guy in his late teens would do. And I just don't think it's the right way to go about it. The simplicity that children see the world through is probably the best way to look at it. It's the whole thing with math questions, isn't it? Where it's like, oh, what's 2 times 2? Or 2 times 2 is 4. Like, oh really? How did you get that? Show you're working. Well, when you have 2 and you have 2 of them, 2 plus 2 is 4. It's like, there are some math questions you don't need to do workings for. There's just some things you don't need to work out. Like, you just know it how it is. It's instinct, it's survival. Some things you look at, some things you read, some things you hear people say, some things you say, and you know, the actions you do. Sometimes it just is what it is, and there's no nuance or complication to it. But because you get so many theatre kids as well that have been taught their whole lives that there is some sort of nuance to every little thing in the world, that it's not so black and white, or it isn't just instinct, there's something deep and meaningful behind everything. They try to find that meaning in every little thing. And a big part of that is why the world is the way that it is. Because nothing can just be solved nice and quick. It's always going to be complicated. Anyway, I was going somewhere with that, but we're running out of time here, and the Scorpion's almost dead. Last couple of heavy attacks because I had enough of it. Luckily, I dropped an ultimate right there, which does about the same damage as a charged heavy attack. So an ultimate can work well, but I usually like to save it for protecting myself against the white and red robots. And I did a little taunt there. I believe not just, you know, beating the game solo or beating the game with a set character, even solo, gets you an achievement. I believe using Blake and doing a taunt is also good. And I thought there'd be an artifact around here, just a cheeky little artifact. So I thought, oh fuck it, I'll take a look. And it was. Not that it does anything because I'm already at level 10. And I don't like that when you prestige in this game, all your skills get lost because you need them. So I'm just going to slowly and dramatically walk towards the escape craft here, and that's pretty much the end of RWBY Grimm Eclipse. I had a lot of fun. If any of you want to see a walkthrough on Arafel, either normally or without upgrades, I'd be keen to give it a shot and revisit it. Otherwise, the next project will probably be God of War 3 on Chaos mode and its challenge modes. I'll see you then.